This is Mike Anderson, the editor-in-chief of Battery Technology, with my comrade Maria Guerra, Neal Award nominee for 2026, and the senior editor of Battery Technology, with our good friend Charlie Parker of Ratel Consulting, freshly back from the Volta meeting out in Stanford, I believe. And we're going to talk about what each of us thinks was the major story of February for your listening and viewing pleasure. So, Charlie, we'll throw it over to you first.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about recent developments around the claims of breakthrough solid-state battery from Donut Lab and the way battery results are shared matters for the entire energy storage industry. So, once again, Finnish startup Donut Lab has been in the headlines for unveiling what it calls production-ready solid-state battery with industry-leading specs, including ultra-fast charging, high energy density, and extreme cycle. At CES 2026, the company announced these results, but initial skepticism arose because the bold claims were not backed by data at the time. To address doubts, Donut Lab commissioned independent testing by the respected Finnish Research Institute VTT Technical Research Center of Finland, and began releasing results through its I do not believe campaign. So they have dad jokes in Finland too. The first published test results came that a single cell can charge very quickly, reaching 80% charge in under 5 minutes at high current. However, experts and industry observers pointed out that these published results only cover one performance metric and leave out key claims such as energy density, longevity, temperature, tolerance, and costs, all of which are critical in real-world applications. Because of this, many in the battery research community have reiterated that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and broader independent verification is still needed before the industry can take these performance guarantees as facts. This brings me to the second part, the need for standardizing publicly released battery test results. Right now, there's no universally accepted framework that dictates how companies should share test protocols, metrics, lab conditions, and raw data. The result is inconsistent and often incomplete reporting for emerging technologies like solid-state batteries. While real gains in incremental and hard-won inconsistent data releases can lead to confusion, hype cycles, misinvestment, and misinformed policy decision. Nothing that hasn't been said before, but a standardized approach might include common testing protocols so that from different labs and companies that are directly comparable, mandatory disclosure of test conditions, temperatures, charge discharge rates, cell weight, and measurement error, and third-party validation criteria, clear requirements on what constitutes independent verification versus self-reported benchmarks. Such standards would improve transparency across the sector, help investors and policymakers separate credible advances from marketing, and accelerate innovation responsibility. It's going to be interesting, and I advise everyone to stay tuned to Battery Technology because they've been covering this very well.
Excellent. Yeah. To that point, yeah, just very quickly. We covered it at the beginning of January. We went on to cover their first test results. We had shared a couple of skeptical videos. And our newest article is today because they just published their second test results. It's fascinating, really. There's a lot of pressure on labs that are looking for money and startups that are looking for money to trumpet their findings. Thank you for that. That's excellent. We'll be following the story with jaundiced eye, but we'll be following the story as it continues. So, all right, Maria, what do you got?
Okay, let me share my screen. So today I just want to talk about government policies and EV adoption. I wrote these two articles in the last 4 weeks regarding 3 different events related to EV adoption. Government policies drastically influence the pace of the EV adoption, and the Trump administration lately has been acting and regarding EV adoption, I just want to make a point of what was happening lately. Regarding the EV network, a judge ruled that the Trump administration unlawfully suspended the Navy Formula program. This is a $5 billion initiative program that could help with the with building the charging network.
Right.
The report, there is a report also that says that the charging network is expanding and has grew in the last year 30%, and I think it's very positive to hear that there has been a ruling about this this program, because it can help with the building of the charging network. The second article that I wrote about, it's regarding another policies during the Trump government. They talk about the EPA rejecting the 2009 greenhouse gas enrichment finding. And there is also deregulation action that it's also affecting the EV adoption. They want to also what is it? There is another policy that they have. I can find it here in the article, but I have it in my notes. Here, the U.S. Department of Transportation recently proposed raising Buy American content requirements for federally funded EV charging stations from 55% to 100% of the cost of all components. This, even though it says it's going to help the making American EV batteries, this is also, it might slow the EV infrastructure and the EV adoption as well. And in particular, my opinion is that when we're talking about EV adoption, it's most about the charging infrastructure than the battery capacity itself, because even though the battery capacity might help with battery anxiety for the users, having a bigger charging network, I believe it can help better to grow the EV adoption. And that's it for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's you're exactly right. There's a couple of things jump out at me. First of all, the EPA thing was astounding, because it wasn't saying in this case whatever the companies are suggesting for emissions is too low or too high. It's saying we don't have the right to tell you about the global warming gas part of the emissions. It's astounding. They say we're just going to ignore the science. So that astounds me.
Yeah, they completely rejected the study. That's all.
Yeah. Years and years of study. The first article you mentioned, with a judge pushing back and eliminating the Trump administration's movements to forego the EV charging funding, it brings me next in line for what I wanted to talk about, which is another set of judges, which are, of course, the Supreme Court of the United States. And this, to me, was a huge story in February. Like the EPA thing, it's going to have ripples for a long time. So the Supreme Court, as we all know now, struck down the IEEPA tariffs that that they had put in place, the Trump administration had put in place, and Trump immediately, the president immediately put in a 10% new tariff instead, and then changed it the next day to a 15% one. But he was doing under a regulation that allows him to put this in for 150 days at which point Congress has to vote to extend it. So it's not quite the same. He's also going to try and do more movements on using tariffs as a punishment for illegal trade-related reasons to stay out. But it's really, really big. After last year, how many times did we cover tariffs and their effect on the battery industry, EVs, manufacturing in general, and the Supreme Court, after waiting quite a long time, one might note, but once they got to it, they ripped it all up and said, sorry, you can't do that. So, and the other thing that the article that I whipped up talks about is there's the potential then for battery makers to seek redress, and some of them are already trying. There's a number of solar energy companies that have filed complaints with the U.S. Court of International Trade, and we cover solar as we for its connection to the battery industry, and so that's relevant. But also, a little company you might have heard of called BYD also is challenging this lawsuit. They filed a lawsuit in the same court. So they don't sell EVs here, but they have 4 different subsidiaries that are at work in the U.S. and the Supreme Court ruling can only help them in the long term. In the short term, we don't know what's going to happen. We simply don't know where this is all going to land. But we do know this, that the major plan that the Trump administration had, that it said was going to help manufacturing and instead made some very screwy numbers last year, has been kiboshed for now. So where it all leads, well, keep watching and we will follow the story. So and that's all I have too. So thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next month and talk about the March stories. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.